All right. Well, we'll dive in, and then as people, wait, what? Oh. Then as people come in, they're welcome to. Well, thanks for coming and checking out the time management breakout session. So a little background on me. 12? Okay, great. My name is Josh Storie. I have had the privilege of serving as the college pastor and then the young adult teaching pastor at Christ Chapel in Fort Worth. That's where things were last night, if y'all were there. So I've gotten to do that for a long time, about 6 years now. So love college students, love what you guys get to do. And as someone who's actually been in the college scene for a while, student leaders y'all make college ministry run. Like without your involvement, things just don't work. And so it's stoked to see y'all actually like wanting to be a part of this and learn and grow and stuff like that. So a few years back, I was talking to a junior TCU student named Stephanie, and she was kind of telling me and a fellow staff person just about her schedule and how overwhelmed she was, and she was talking about, school and some organizations and her sorority and an internship and church stuff, and she was like, I'm just so busy, I just feel so swamped, like there's just not enough hours in the day, like I just feel so exhausted. And the staff person beside me, who was married and had a couple of kids, looks at her and says, well, enjoy it because you'll never have more time than you do right now. And I was like, it's kind of a savage response, but Stephanie kind of took a step back and she looks at us and just with all sincerity, which goes, I can't envision a scenario where I have less time than I do right now. And the person beside me kind of rolled her eyes, but to be honest, I resonated with what Stephanie was saying because although she might not have been married, she might not have had kids, that didn't mean that her schedule wasn't full, right? And so maybe you find yourself in a very similar spot where you think about the school year and you think, I'm just so exhausted. Like between, again, school, organizations, internships, church stuff, and you just find yourself in this place where you're like, I just wish there were more hours in the day. I'm just so tired and exhausted, and it just feels like my schedule owns me, right? Anyone ever feel that way? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool, fantastic. Well, then you're in the right place. So what I want to do today is really simple. I want us to figure out one specific thing, and that's how do we get to a place where we own our time as opposed to our time owning us? How do we own our time as opposed to our time owning us? And so we're going to talk some more specifics and stuff like that, and have a time at the end for Q&A. But I want to start off by really talking about the idea that time is actually a very deeply theological issue. I think that we don't really think about time management as being even like a spiritual thing, but it really, really is, because managing our time is rooted in the cultural mandate that God gives us in Genesis 1. So it's up on the screen, but let me just read this to you. It says that then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So the mandate that God gives to mankind is simply to have dominion over his creation. Now, I want to be clear that to have dominion is not the same thing as to be domineering, right? I think that we oftentimes confuse those words. To be domineering means to be oppressive, right? But to have dominion means that we exercise authority, that we rule and reign and exercise authority in a way that brings flourishing, that brings life and joy to the things that we're overseeing. And so what our call is by God is that as his image bearers, as his representatives on the earth, our job is to take his creation and steward it well, to have dominion over it in a way that brings flourishing, right? Now, the problem is the fall, right? Because when the fall happened, the fall affected everything, including our ability to do what God asked us to do. In fact, Paul talks about this in Romans 1. And so check this out. He says, for although that they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. So notice, this is like Genesis 1 verbiage here. I mean, how often do you see creeping things in the Bible, right? It says, they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So let me explain what Paul just said. Paul is saying that when the fall happened, there was this reversal that took place, that all of the things in God's creation that we were called to kind of rule and reign over, now the creation has the ability to rule and reign over us. That we can worship and serve the creation rather than the Creator in a way that the very things that we're called to have dominion over now have dominion over us, right? So we see this all the time. Let's take money, for instance, right? Money is not inherently wrong or evil. Money is a good thing that God created. We need money to eat. We need money to pay our bills. We need money to bless others and to serve and see the kingdom expanded. But how easy is it to get to a place where if we're not careful, instead of having dominion over our cash, money has dominion over us? Where we become consumed with how much we have or how much others have and doing all these things in order to really make sure that every single thought and action that we have is under this banner of, and money is just owning me, right? And I say all of that because time is no different. God has created time to be this wonderful gift that He has called us to steward, to have dominion over, yet oftentimes we can come to a place where we allow our time or our schedules to rule and reign over us as opposed to us ruling and reigning over it. And so the question for us is, man, how do we kind of reestablish dominion over our time, right? And how do we come to a place where time doesn't own us, our calendar doesn't own us, but we actually rule and reign and steward it? So I want to give you kind of 4 steps to kind of better owning your time, kind of 4 practical ways. And the first is this. It's to acknowledge how much time we actually have. I think the first step is for us to really understand, like, how much time do we actually have? What are we actually working with? And I think a common thing that I hear is, man, I just wish there were more hours in the day, right? Like, if there were just like 2 or 3 more hours in my day, I'd be good. Like I just need more hours in my day. But the reality is that we actually have a lot of time that we don't always think about, right? So let me break it down for you like this. There are 168 hours in our week, right? Let me try to step over here. So 168 hours in our week. That's 24 hours a day times 7 days a week, right? That's how many hours in a week. Let's say, so I'm going to be pretty conservative. Let's say that you work for 50 hours a week. So 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And that's like 10 hours, like, nose to the grindstone, right? That's not like a nap here. That's not running to the rec. That's like 10 hours a day at a desk, working, studying, having meetings, all that stuff, right? That's a lot of time, right? Then let's say that you sleep for 8 hours a night, which, let's be honest, most people don't sleep for 8 hours a night. But let's just say that's 56 hours of your week. Then let's say that you eat for 3 hours a day, right? An hour for breakfast, hour for lunch, hour for dinner. Also laughable because most of us just grab something on the go and we're just gone, right? That would be a 13-hour day on top of 8 hours of sleep, right? That seems like a very full schedule, right? But if that's that means that is a total of 127 hours, which means that you have 41 hours unaccounted for. Like almost 2 full days worth of time that you're not eating, sleeping, working, doing all that stuff, right? Yet oftentimes when I think about my schedule, I'm like, I don't know where the time goes. Yet even if you pulled a 13-hour day every single day and slept for 8 hours, there'll be 41 hours that you weren't working, sleeping, or eating that you have to figure out how to manage, right? And so the question is, if that's how much time we actually have, are we managing it well? So I think step 1 is just figuring out, how do we really understand how much time we have. And so acknowledging that is step 1. Step 2 is to have a plan. The reality is that if you don't have a plan for your time will inevitably just own you, right? Everything else will just kind of take over. I really care about my health, but I'm also not the guy that lives in the gym. I'm sure no one walked in here, it was like, that guy lives in the gym. That's just not me, right? But I found that it's important to me, yet it's the first thing to go. So if like a meeting runs late, if I get interrupted, if there's an emergency, like I'm not gonna work out for like a week because that's just not the thing. So I have to like schedule it into my time because like and view it as an appointment because otherwise it's just getting lost, right? And I think we all have certain things in our schedules that like, man, this is important. I want to do this. Maybe to even just spending time with the Lord, right? It's like, man, I have, some time, but then this thing happened, or I got this call, and I just lost it. And so having a plan, I think, is unbelievably important because all of the distractions and all of the other things in our day will actually own us. So I actually have a copy of these right over here if you want one when you guys leave. But this is a planner that I use, and there's like a bajillion of these things, online. But for me, this is a productivity schedule. So every day I have a binder, and I just put these there. And every day I start my day off like this. So you like follow this from this side, and you go all the way down. So it starts off, it asks, if I could live today over again, I would blank, which is kind of like a weird thing to start your day asking, but it makes me think about what could I potentially do today that I would really regret, right? And so usually it's like, I'm going to be kind to my wife. I'm going to be more present. I'm going to spend less time on my phone. And so it's a really cool way to kind of like stop before everything starts and say, all right, if I could live today over again, I would probably want to be more present, be more kind, be blah, 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 right? Then things I get to enjoy today, which is just a really good way to kind of think of what do I get to enjoy today that's just a blessing from God, just like a gift that I can say, wow, I get to have lunch with a really awesome friend. I get to have, 30 minutes in my day to just go for a walk. I get to do, X, Y, Z. And then you list appointments, so all the things that I like actually have to do. Then I have my to-do list, which is, to be honest, like stuff that I need to do, and if I can get most of them done, great, but if not, like it's not the end of the world. Then you go up here to project 1, project 2, project 3. These are, what are the 3 most important things that I need to knock out today? And I think that oftentimes I'll like start a day and I just get so overwhelmed by all the things that I need to do or all the things that I feel like I have to do that I can oftentimes get just paralyzed by just the sheer like nature of everything. But if I can say, all right, what are 3 specific things that I can knock out? I feel so much more productive. And then, tomorrow I can do it all over again, right? And then lastly, and this is something that they do that I think is interesting. They have you write down a life theme. So like kind of what your kind of life mission statement is, if you will. And what that does is once you kind of realize, all right, this is what I'm here for. This is what God has made me to do. It allows you to run everything that you say yes or no to through that filter, right? So my life theme that I've kind of written down is that God has created me to compellingly communicate truth to a culture that's uninterested in truth. And so everything that I do is run through this like lens of, if someone asks me to do something, it's like, well, does that actually further what I feel like God has created me to do? No, great, then I'm going to say no. Not because it's not like a good thing, it's just because like I don't have time, and this is not what I feel like God has put me on the earth to do. Like I used to play music back in the day, and so every now and then someone will be like, hey man, you want to come like fill in and play guitar in this like worship set? And it's like, dude, I love music, I love doing that, that's super fun. But right now in this season, I don't feel like that's what God is calling me to do, and that's going to take up 8 hours of my time with rehearsal and this event, and so I'm going to say no because I don't feel like that's what God's called me to do, which frees up time to do stuff that He has. So this is just what I do from a planning standpoint, just to have something that helps me kind of center and say, all right, what am I actually going to do today to make the most of my time? But again, there's a million of those types of things out there. Third, I would say this: learn to roll with interruptions. The reality is that even if you have a phenomenal plan for your day, if you have a phenomenal plan for your time, something's going to happen, right? Some emergency is going to pop up. You're going to have some roommate drama. Like something will happen that just throws the entire plan out. And I think that what's really easy for us to do is to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater in a sense where if like an hour of my time gets taken up, I just throw my whole schedule out the window. It's like, oh, the whole day is a loss now because that thing like came up, right? And so learning to have a plan and viewing interruptions as something that's going to happen, but learning how to kind of roll with them, I think is actually really important. In fact, there's a really interesting scene where Jesus kind of models this well for us. There's a scene where Jesus gets word that John the Baptist, his cousin, gets his head cut off, which is pretty gnarly news, right? That's a bad day. And so he decides, like, I want to go be alone. It's like, I want to go be alone and pray and watch what happens next. It says, now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from all of the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd and had compassion on them and healed their sick, right? So imagine this. Worst day of your life, horrible news, your cousin just died. You go, like, all you want to do is be alone, to pray, to grieve, to process. You show up, there's thousands of people saying, hey man, can you heal our sick, right? Massive interruption, right? But notice what he does. He doesn't get flustered. He doesn't write them off. He doesn't throw a fit. He says that he has compassion on them. So he sees them and says, okay, like, this wasn't my plan. This wasn't how my day was supposed to go, but you know what? I'm going to have compassion. I'm going to stop. I'm going to be present. I'm going to engage. I'm going to do what is right in front of me. And this actually leads to the feeding of the 5,000. So what's wild is one of the most famous miracles in all of Scripture comes because of an interruption. Right? That like that wasn't on his docket for the day. It wasn't like, hey, today, guys, get your popcorn ready. I'm about to do something phenomenal. No, he's like, all right, okay, yeah, let's do it, right? But then here's what I think is so important. Watch what happens after the crowds leave. It says, and after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray, and when evening came, he was there alone. So the point is that Jesus had this plan for his day, right? He shows up, just wants to be alone, wants to pray, wants to grieve. Thousands of people ask him to heal the sick, right? He heals them. He performs this incredible miracle. That wasn't like a short interruption, right? That like wasn't a, hey, I'll knock this thing out and get back to my day. Like that was probably hours and hours and hours of his time. Yeah, he didn't write it off and say, well, I guess my day's shot. Like, I guess I can't go spend time with the Lord like I was wanting to. He said, no. Like, as soon as everyone left, he's like, okay, now I'm going to go back and do what I had originally set out to do. Even if it's the middle of the night, I'm going to be alone. I'm going to pray. I'm going to do all these things that I really feel like God's calling me to do. So learning to have a plan is so important, but also just being able to be flexible enough to say, hey, there's going to be interruptions, but I'm not going to let the interruptions actually just throw off my entire day where I just waste the extra time that I have. Lastly is this, is learn to say no. No has become a really dirty word in our culture. And I think it's become a really negative word for a couple reasons. One, we live in a culture that rewards and really celebrates busyness, right? Like we wear busyness as a badge of honor because we have come to believe that the busier you are, the more important you must be, right? So all of a sudden, if being like status or being important means that you are just jam-packed, right? And that you have no margin for anything, then I'm going to say yes to everything I can possibly say yes to because that's what's going to make me seem really important and really, in demand. You guys are here because you're leaders, right? And if I know anything about really quality leaders in college is that you are very much in demand, right? Like everyone wants quality leaders. And so I would guess that you have a lot of opportunities to say yes to stuff, right? And it's really easy to buy this idea that the more stuff I have on my plate, the more that I say yes to, that's what's going to make me more impressive or have more status or be seen as valuable, right? But then second, it's not just that our culture rewards busyness. Our culture penalizes people who say no, right? So I read an article in Entrepreneur magazine probably 3 or 4 years ago, and they had polled a bunch of people on the idea of like vacation days. And they'd asked all of these employees from all over, they said, how many of you think that taking a vacation, saying no, stopping, taking rest is like healthy and important? And 96%, which if you're not great with math, that's almost everybody, 96% said yes. Very healthy, very needed. Everyone needs to stop, say no, vacation. Then they asked those same people, how many of you actually intend to use your vacation days? And 40% said, I have no intention to use my vacation days at all. It's like, whoa, hold on. You just said that it's healthy and needed, yet you have no intention to do it. And they asked why. They said, I feel like I just can't say no. I just can't stop. But then, and what's crazy is they asked the employers. They asked all these people's bosses and said, what do you guys think about your employees actually taking their vacation? And 40% of the employers said that they view people that take vacation days as less dedicated, less successful, and less important. And so there's a 4 in 10 chance that you might, work for a boss eventually that sees you just saying no, saying, hey, I can't take this project on because I need to go take a week to just chill. They might see you as less dedicated or less impressive, right? So we have this really weird culture that makes us feel like we can't say no because either we'll miss out on something or someone might think less of us, right? But the reality is that you and I are not robots, right? We are humans with souls. And as a result, we need just time just to stop and to rest. And sometimes saying no, I think, is the most holy thing that you can possibly do because it says, hey, I have limits. I can only do so much, right? And I think that one of the really interesting things about Jesus is that Jesus had really healthy boundaries. Jesus didn't heal everybody. Jesus didn't perform a miracle for every crowd. Jesus didn't do everything that everybody asked. In fact, even the story of the bleeding woman who touches his garment and she's healed. That story is so fascinating to me because he's walking to do something, and there's this massive crowd pressing in around him. And everyone in the crowd is clamoring for his attention. Everyone is wanting him to do something, and he's just walking. And then this one woman that kind of fights through and touches him and has this phenomenal act of faith. But Jesus isn't stopping and healing everybody. He just can't, right? Even God in the flesh can't say yes to everything, right? So if God in the flesh can't say yes to everything, I don't feel like we can say yes to everything too, personally. And so I think there is this healthy level of understanding that I'm going to say yes to the things that I feel like God has called me to say yes to, but I can't say yes to everything. And so there's I think something very spiritual about learning to say no, saying, I'm so sorry, I would love to, but I just can't. I think saying no is a very, very important thing. So I think at the end of the day, if we find ourselves in a place where we understand kind of what the cultural mandate is, right? If our job as the image bearers of God, right? The representatives of God on this earth, then our job is to have stewardship, to have dominion over the things that God has created in a way that brings flourishing and life. There's so many things that applies to, but I don't want us to overlook the fact that also applies to the concept of time, right? That our job is to have dominion and to exercise dominion over our time in a way that everything around us flourishes. And so that all comes down to having some really good kind of boundaries on the way that we manage time. So that's kind of like a flyover of what we were kind of talking about. But what questions do you guys have about any of this or all of this or anything?
Okay, so I got one.
Yeah.
So, if you are a huge people person, right?
Yeah.
And you like talking to people, and I believe one of my personal beliefs is we're here to have relationships with people.
Yeah, totally.
That's the most important thing that we can do is be with people and talk and be there and be present and everything. So I know a couple people who have busy schedules and everything, and they're so busy that they schedule people that be yo, I got to meet for 1 hour, and then I gotta go do this. And for me, that just feels super weird, saying because the reason I get caught up with time management is I have stuff I actually need to do, school and stuff. But I think that, but then I start talking about my friend about the gospel, and it lasts 4 hours.
Right.
And I'm oh well, I feel a lot better doing that because I feel that's something that's a kingdom conversation that's going to be for eternity, and my math homework is going to be for whatever.
Right.
And so but then I'll talk for 4 hours, and then 2 hours ago I was supposed to finish that assignment, and I'm oh well crap, whatever. I don't care, and then I go to sleep, and then I don't do it.
Right.
So how would you feel about when you're talking to someone or things that you think that are more important, me with relationships?
Yeah.
Is it okay to tell someone I hate talking to someone and then be yo, this is a really good conversation, but I have to go and do this. I just feel wrong doing that because they're oh, okay, we're just in the middle of a really good, helpful conversation, and you're just kind of oh, my schedule doesn't allow me to go any further,
Totally.
So like, what do you think about that?
Dude, that's a great question, man. I think your head and your heart are both in the exact right spot, right? Because like we should be about people all the time, right? I think that one of the things is that it's like when I talk to people about like preaching, right? Like guys who are really new to preaching have this idea of like, if I get a sermon, like I need to pack all of theology and all of the Bible into this one sermon. And so I'm gonna like cross-reference all this other stuff, and it just feels like drinking from a fire hose. And so I always tell guys, say, you have the rest of your life to preach the Bible. Let's preach one text at a time, right? And you have the rest of your life to preach through all the rest of it. I think that works the exact same way, right? You have a ton of time to have that conversation. And so I don't think it's inappropriate to be as present as you possibly can in that conversation, but also understand like the limits of time and say, hey, man, I'm so sorry. I would love to finish this conversation. And when are you free next? Because, man, I have this thing. I have to take care of it. Otherwise, like, I'm going to fail school or something, you know? Because, I mean, everyone who's in college understands schoolwork. I mean, like, that's everyone's ultimate job is to come, get an education, you know, all that stuff. And so I think it's an opportunity to have multiple conversations as opposed to trying to squeeze everything into one, right? And so, you know, if there's a way, and you know, if you have like an hour scheduled and it goes 2, great. But like having it going from 2 to 4 is a pretty significant time, right? And so, you know, I think it's appropriate to say, hey, dude, we could talk about this for 4 hours. And honestly, I would love to, but I have this assignment. So can we meet up tomorrow? Can we meet up next week? Man, because like I really, really want to finish this conversation. And I think there's also a level of discernment where we've all been in those conversations where it becomes really clear, like, okay, like this is important. Like this is a God moment where God's doing something really, really special. And I think there should be the flexibility of, hey, welcome. There should be the flexibility of saying, I have this thing, but I can push it back a little bit because I want to be as present as I possibly can in the moment. But then also learning that balance of, if this can be another conversation, then let's schedule another time to hang out and have, you know, or say, hey, I'm going to schedule a time when I have nothing afterwards and we can just talk for as long as you want to talk. So I think it's a balance, to be honest, because I struggle with that too of I never want to be the guy that's in a conversation and is like looking at my watch or looking at my phone or like looking over the shoulder of me like, you know, it's like, I don't know, like just be present, be looking at them. But we have limits. And so, you know, if you have a 4-hour conversation, that's huge. But then if that means that like schoolwork isn't getting done, you got to figure out how to balance that. So that's what I would say, but I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Thank you.
Cool. Other questions?
I was going to ask, so I love Google Calendar.
Yeah.
So I'm big on scheduling things. My thing is that I don't do them. Like, I'll take the time out to schedule it weeks in advance.
Yeah.
Like assignments, and my days, my eating times, all those things.
Yeah.
And I just don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I don't know, I don't want to do that. How can I just help, or how can I just actually do them?
Yeah, totally.
Instead of just scheduling it and not doing it.
Yeah. What do you do instead?
Honestly, nothing.
Yeah.
I find it best to get in a routine every day.
Yeah.
So build a routine, try to follow that as best you can. I mean, life comes up and stuff. But saying, okay, I have, at the beginning of the semester every year, I make a weekly schedule. So I put all my classes in, and then I put in all my meeting times I have. And then I can schedule everything else I need around those times. And so just trying to create a routine every day and trying to follow that as best I can has at least helped me like complete those assignments, and writing out all the assignments in one place so that you can see like, oh, this is coming up, I need to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I created a Google Sheet so I can like check out like assignments all my assignments, and that's what helps me. But with like scheduling, I tried to build a routine, but just this semester, it was all over the place for me because I was just like because I'm a education major.
Oh, cool.
So I was with like students like days in the morning, like early in the morning, like some days I wasn't. So building a routine was just like. I finally built my routine, but like honestly, like 3 weeks ago. Yeah. At the end of the semester, and I'm like, better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a discipline thing, you know, and I think that's like.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. Yeah, because I mean, I feel like anything in life is all about the discipline of, am I going to do what I say that I want to do, you know? And I mean, that can be anything. Time is just like one example. I mean, that happens with everything, right? So, yeah, and I mean, even if it's just like taking like, baby steps of saying, I'm going to pick, because like, I get really ambitious of, I'll do like a complete overhaul of my life. Like I watched a documentary in the height of COVID when no one was doing anything about like plant-based eating. And I was like, I'm going to go plant-based, right? And so I was like my whole life, I just like, get all the dairy out of here, get all the meat out of here, and for like a week, like I ate plant-based, and then I was like, man, I really want a burger, and then I got, totally, and so, but like, it's so much easier to say, oh, I'm gonna eat one salad a week, right? And then after like a month, oh, I'm gonna eat 2 salads a week, right? As opposed to just like completely overhauling the whole way that I eat, right? And I feel like our schedules can be like one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm gonna map it all out, I'm gonna block it all out, I'm gonna do this and do this and do this. And then we get tired, we get fatigued, we get a conversation that lasts an hour longer than we'd expected, and it's like, I kind of want to take a nap. I kind of want to just go for a walk. I just kind of want to do a thing, And so I think having the discipline to even like start a little smaller of saying, cool, I'm going to schedule this, and like every week I'm going to do this at this time, and then kind of build off of that. I don't know if that helps too, but sometimes it's just like stepping back and just taking like smaller baby steps and kind of working around that.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
I think for me, like the main reason I wanted to time manage it is because I know that next year I have like a ton of responsibilities and I have like a lot of hard classes, and I, like you said, saying no to things, but when things are given to you, they're like really great opportunities that I know they're from God, but like it's also like putting so much stress on me. I just like, I don't know, it's just hard saying no to things. Yeah. I know they're like really amazing opportunities. I'm like, is that God telling you to do that, or is like it's too much? But I'm also like, God would give me anything that I couldn't handle, even though I think it's like gonna be so hard, and I don't know how I'm gonna do it. But like this, I feel like I wanted to come to this because I know I need time management and just starting to plan. Like I hate plans because I know they never work out. They never work out. So I never like just plan out my day. Oh, what am I doing at 8 a.m.? I'm like, no, I don't want to. I want to be more spontaneous. Like, what am I going to do then? But like also I know I need to make sure I have time to study because I can be distracted because I do want to like spend time with people, and like that's a main part of my job. Like next year I'm going to be like kind of like an RA, and like I'm a teacher too, like I'm kind of like a pal. It's called peer academic leader, so you like you teach a class, and so like plus that with all my other classes and having leadership at my like ministry at school, like that's still a lot of work, and it's just like I'm so happy for it. I'm thankful, but I know like a lot of my time is spent towards that because of office hours, and like I have class every week, and there's more that goes into class, like lectures I have to like prepare for, and like I still have 18 hours, like it's crazy.
Totally.
So, but I know that I can handle it with God. Without God, no, that's not gonna happen. But like just like, but there's even more stuff I want to do. Like I want to join other clubs. Like I want to be part of like maybe like a graphic designer and like in a club or something. But like But like I can't do that because I don't have time for that. Yeah.
No, you just touched on something that I think is really important, is like there's so many things that we all want to do, and I think because like there is the stuff I have to do, stuff that's current responsibilities, right? Like you take 18 hours of classes, like you have to do that, right? That's just built in, I have to do it. But then you have the stress of maintaining that on top of, oh, but I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to try that, and that's where I feel like things get really overwhelming. Growing up, my dad always told me, he's like, pray that you have the ability to discern the difference between opportunity and distraction. And that has been something that I've held dear for a long time, because you have all these things that come your way, and it's like, okay, is this an opportunity from the Lord, or is this a distraction? Is this just something that sounds good, and what can I say no to that's good in order to say yes to something that's better, right? And I think that there are like all these kind of things. And to your point about spontaneity, so I used to be in a band, and we had this performance coach that was talking about playing shows and how every band wants to have that like spontaneous moment on stage, right? Where like the whole crowd is just, you just have this special moment. And he said that what most people don't understand is that spontaneity stems from structure, right? That like if spontaneity by definition is like deviation from the norm, then unless you have a norm to go back to, then you're just winging it, right? It's just, I'm just seeing what else is out there. And he said that like all the best bands in the world will actually plan moments in their set that have the opportunity to go in a spontaneous direction. And if it does, great, but they always know right where they're going back to. And I've always thought about that in the sense of us and our schedules where, we all want to have these kind of like cool, fun, spontaneous lives. But unless we have like a schedule to deviate from, then we're not really being spontaneous, we're just winging it. And like, if I don't have something to come back to, like, in the example of Christ, right? Where it's like, he had his little schedule, he had his like plan, and then he got to be really spontaneous when 2,000 people showed up on the shore and was like, hey, can you heal us? And he's like, all right, cool, whatever. But he had something to go back to, right? And so I think that really is the tension that we feel oftentimes of, I want to be disciplined, I want to have some structure, I want to have all these things, but I want to be spontaneous. I want to be able to say yes to whatever comes my way and stuff like that. And so I feel like that really is this tension that we have to figure out how to navigate. And I think it's different for everyone because we all have different schedules and responsibilities and stuff like that. But it really is tough to figure out, how do I honor the things, like honor my current commitments, but also be able to like have room for the spontaneous and being able to say yes to fun stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, it just always has to work. Like, I want to love life.
Totally, yeah.
God wants us to love our life.
Exactly.
All these amazing things to love our life and like continue like growing more people for them to love their own life.
Yeah, totally.
And like if I just like continue, if I take it out of focus and just focus on doing it just to get it done, and just like, that's how like God, if you just read your Bible just because I have to read my Bible.
Right.
It's different. You want to do it. And I don't
Totally.
want to be taken away from that. Like,
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just stressed. I don't want to stress. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay. But I felt like that was really helpful because like I always like to be like very unpredictable. I don't want to be just basic. This is exactly what I'm not straying from it at all.
Right.
To me that's boring. Like
Totally.
But like but like plans, I know that I need them and they're good to have a structure, but I just don't have to be like too rigid in them. Like there's times you can have other things too.
Totally. Yeah.
I think it's also important to look at your path and say, is this something God needs me to do in my plan, or is this something that I'm wanting to do?
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm not in control.
Yeah.
Even though I want to be.
That's a great distinction. Yeah.
Or even
totally.
scheduling out for you.
Yeah. That's been huge too. I think we don't schedule out time to have fun, and like we should, like there should be times in our schedule, like something that I've had to do over the years is I'll like schedule like time in my calendar to do nothing. And when people are like, hey man, can you meet at, Friday at 3? It's like, dude, I'm so sorry. I wish I could. I'm busy. But Monday I can meet, or like, hey, anytime on this day I can meet. And like, I don't have to tell them that I'm doing nothing, but like my appointment at Friday at 3 is I'm doing nothing because my soul needs to do nothing. My soul needs to rest. My soul needs to go hang out with my wife. My soul needs to go do something fun, right? And so, two, there's also this weird thing in our culture where people like to know why. And I'm of the persuasion where I don't think people are entitled to know like why, right? But like if someone's like, hey man, can you do this thing? And you're like, dude, I'm so sorry, I can't, but I can on this day. They're like, well, why can't you right there? It's like,
None of your business.
yeah, it's like, I have a thing. Like, I don't have to, and it's like, well, you're being shady. It's like, no, I'm not. Like, I have an appointment. You don't have to know what that appointment is, because I think that, like, it's really easy for people to be like, dude, that's super lame. Like, you can do that later. It's like, no. Like, for the sake of my soul and my sanity.
I'm not going to.
Yeah, totally, And so, like, I think even having time in your schedule just to say, from this point, for these 2 hours, I'm going to do nothing but just have fun and just be, and like schedule spontaneity. Like call up a friend and say, hey, do you want to go do whatever and just go have fun for a couple hours? Like I think that's very, very, very important for our schedules.
Something you said about like opportunities, like having all sorts, like all these opportunities, and you can tell that they're good and they're like from the Lord, but you don't know which one to pick. Something like big that me and my fiance have been working through is like God is an infinite God. There's not this one specific plan that you have to follow the exact way, and it's the only way you're going to be like in His will. He's an infinite God, so everything He does is infinite. And so sometimes it's like He's giving you the opportunity to make a choice, like have discernment. And you can't make a wrong decision. Like something she had to go through is like, do I do nursing school? Do I get a job at Mass Comm? She just graduated and she picked nursing school. I fully believe that she could have done God's will in Mass Comm in a job, but she just was like, this is what I would like to do, and I see that the Lord's given me this choice. So sometimes like recognizing that opportunities aren't like, oh, I have to do all these things. It can be like, oh, the Lord's given me these options. Like I like be thankful like I get to choose this next point.
Totally.
Yeah, I can be in the mindset saying, you know, there's a wrong choice. I have to choose the right one.
Right.
Which one is it? Like, which hell God just tell me? Like, should I do architecture? Should I go and be a history teacher? I don't know. Like, but
Yeah.
It can be like that. And I feel like, yeah, there are different. I really come to know that like recently that, you know, even if I change my major to engineering or something like that, like it's gonna work out no matter what. You can still use B, but like if I just stick it out, it's gonna be fine. You know? So
sometimes you have to pick the wrong decision to get to the right end.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
So for you, how have you seen the Lord? So like when you say like, I feel like I don't have time or whatever, like God's gonna, like she said, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle or that He can't handle.
Yeah.
So like I feel like if you're supposed to do something, God is going to like make sure that you're able to do it.
Yeah.
So like how is God in your life like an example of like you're doing all this stuff and you feel like you don't have time for a certain thing? Like how have you seen God just be like, oh crap, like you're just walking around one way or like something just opens up,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh shoot, like I
Yeah.
don't think I was gonna be able to do that.
Yeah.
So like, do you think that's something that requires faith? Like when you have faith in the Lord, because I feel there's two things that you can either not have faith and you try to do it all on your own and you try to fix things on your own and it doesn't work out because you're human and you're gonna mess up and you can't perfectly schedule everything.
Right.
But then you can rely on the Lord, be like, you know what, I don't really know how I'm gonna get this done.
Yeah.
Somehow if I don't get it done, maybe that's what I'm supposed to.
Totally.
But like, you know, how have you seen that in your own life?
Yeah. So I do a lot of like preaching, and I think that preaching is one of those things that I take really seriously. It's also a very time-consuming thing, and like the hours it takes to be diligent in studying and being able to make sure, all right, Lord, like, is this what the text is saying? Like, is this what you have for our people? Like, I can't write a sermon just kind of in like my margin, right? Of like, oh, cool, I got like 20 minutes here. So like, there's times where I need like uninterrupted, like 3 to 4 hour blocks of time to just sit and read and study. And it's tough to get 3 to 4 uninterrupted blocks or 3 or 4 hours of uninterrupted time. And so there have been weeks where I've tried to be as diligent as I possibly could be with my time. And stuff just happens, and I'll get, you know, an email that's urgent, or, you know, my wife will have an emergency or something, and those are the weeks where, you know, Sunday's coming regardless, you know, and so there have been weeks where I feel like the time that I wanted to prep just disappeared, and those are usually the weeks where I'm like walking on stage and I'm like, this is going to be brutal. You know, I was like, you know, I don't feel prepared. I don't even really know what I'm talking about, to be honest. And so, you know, I have this conversation with like the Lord often where I'm a firm believer that like the Lord honors just faithfulness. And I was like, all right, Lord, like I've been as faithful with the time that I've had as I can possibly be. I feel like I've been diligent. I feel like I've poured everything that I've had within the time frame that I've had. Like I don't feel like I wasted it. I think I just did as much as I could in the time allotted. Like, Lord, it's up to you now. And it's hilarious because the weeks where I have all the time in the world and I feel good and I feel prepped and I'm walking on stage, I'm like, man, this is going to be so good. It's like, usually it's like, it's all right. But like, it's the weeks where I feel like frazzled and disjointed, and like my week was wild, but I just did as much as I could. Like, people like walk up to me like, dude, when you said this, man, the Lord spoke. I'm like, I didn't even say that. Like, I don't even know what. I was like, that's cool. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But you know, like, the Lord just proves to be faithful over and over. So I think, like, all that to say, we all have like moments in time where like a day just gets away from us, or a week just gets away from us, and it's like, wow, this is not how I saw the week going. But I think being able to be as diligent, disciplined, and faithful in the moments that you do have, right? Because I mean, like, if like my day gets interrupted, I have the choice of, am I going to spend the next 20 minutes scrolling through Instagram, or am I going to say, all right, I got 20 minutes and I'm going to grind on this thing because it's all I have. In the moments where I tend to say, okay, I'm going to take advantage of every little block of time that I have, the Lord tends to really like honor that in ways. So I'm like, cool, like I could have done that for 8 hours and I don't think it would have been what the Lord did in that, you know, which is like not an excuse to just kind of like halfway do things, you know, and be like, all right, like, Hail Mary, all right, God, you know, but like actually saying, Lord, I did all I could possibly do. I need you to take over. So I think that's like an example in my own life, but, you know, I just think the Lord honors our faithfulness. And so I think we all have choices in what that faithfulness looks like. Of either I can tune out, I can veg, I can, you know, use my margins of time to do stuff to kind of check out, or I can try to be as faithful as I can.
And I think a lot of times, like, who just spoke in the general session?
Drew.
Drew, when he's talking about, like, I feel like with time management, a lot of times, we always think of, like, he literally was talking about how sometimes the answers are super simple and you try to, like, make it a huge deal.
Yeah.
And, like, it sucks to hear, but, like, with time management, like you were talking about, sometimes you literally just gotta, there's no way around stuff, you just gotta do it. Like, you expect someone to be like, oh, well, this is blah, blah, and you expect some big old, like, oh.
Yeah.
But it's literally like, no, you just literally do it. Like, there's no way around it. So, like Jesus, like, he's a miracle worker, but he's also human, and he just had to do stuff. Like, there's no way around, you know, getting, I mean, if he wanted to, he could have, like, with the crowd of people, could have floated away and been like, oh, you want to see me, whatever.
Right.
He's human, he was like, crap, like, they're here. He probably didn't want to do it.
Yeah,
he just
totally.
But he's like, I have to just do it, and I have to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, like, for this is talking to myself, like, I got to stop trying to find some solution that's never been thought of before, that is like, oh, it's going to, like, make my day easier or whatever. But I'm human just like everyone else. Everyone has the same amount of time. Yeah. It's just, like, one person is more diligent. So, like you said, like, I feel like I deserve that 20 minutes just to be on my phone.
Totally, yeah.
And the other person's like, well, I might deserve it, but I know that this is going to help me in the long run. This 20 minutes of getting this work done. Yeah. Like, you just do it. And so that's the difference between people who are successfully doing their time and the people who don't. Because my thing is, like, scheduling. I'm really bad at overscheduling and then not writing it down. And then being like, someone's like, let's hang out. I'm like, oh, let's do it. And then I'm like, I get a text like, where are you at? And I'm like, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So, like, because I don't write it down. So, like, and I talked to my college minister, Gavin, and he has a schedule for everything. So that's why he scheduled me when he met me. He's like, hey, I have an hour to, like, eat lunch with you. Let's eat lunch. Because I have this next hour to do this. And so that's the difference between me and him. Yeah. And so he schedules a lot, but he writes it down so he doesn't, like, say yes to something and, like, what's it called? Like overlapping stuff. Oh, yeah. What it's called, you know? And so, like, that's what I'm struggling with. It's just, but it's encouraging also, like you said, is that if you do everything you're supposed to do, and that's all you can do, the rest is up to the Lord. Yeah, totally. And so that's the difference of, like, that 20 minutes, you really didn't do what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And so then if something happened, it's kind of on you. Yeah. But, like, if you really truly did what the Lord wants you to do and you use your time wisely, and after that, like, there's nothing you can do, and you have to be okay with that. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, and, you know, on that, the idea of, like, you know, even someone just having an hour for lunch, right? Going back to your original question, I think, like, there is a way where that can seem so, like, so rigid. You know, when he did that to me, he did that, and, like, as soon as he did that, I was like, he said, no, what he did, he sent me a link. Oh. It was a link, and then it literally said, hang out with Gavin. That's what it said. And I was like, bro, what? That's so like weird. I was like, it kind of made me mad. I was like, you're gonna have to schedule time to like.
Right.
It seemed like he was like all the way up here.
Right, totally. It seems impersonal.
Yeah, and I was like, bro, and he came and talked to me. He was like, I know that looks super. Like, I'm gonna change what it says. Like, it looks super weird, but like. Like you said, I'm busy, but I also love people, and I know that's important.
Yeah.
And even if it's just 1 hour, I want to have that hour, so I'm gonna make time for that. And I was when he explained it that way, I was like, oh, okay, like that's better.
Totally. And I think too, like to me, what happens in that hour is really important, right? Because like I agree, there's like times where, anytime that anyone's like, dude, I just have an hour. It's like, okay, you just have an hour, or whatever, like so important. But like, sometimes that's just the way the day goes. But like to me, the difference is like, hey, I just have an hour, but dude, that hour is all you, right? Like I'm not trying to get to the next thing. Like like you are what this hour is about. And like, dude, I've had some meetings with guys that were like really busy that I was really surprised they even got an hour of their time. But when I was with them, I was like, I feel like I'm the only person on the planet. Like, this is amazing. Like, you probably have 200 things that you're bouncing around, in your head, but you're super present with me. And so I think to me, that is one of the coolest things. Like, in the moments that I've been on the receiving end of it, is when guys can say, hey, I have an hour, but you are the only thing that I'm doing, in that hour. So, that is that, like, weird balance of not trying to seem too like, so important. All right, but like really just like making your time count and be like, hey, like you're it, So.
That's good.
I find it kind of nice that someone's like, I want to spend an hour with you.
Yeah, totally.
I like you so much. I plan to hang out with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, and like someone being like even proactive about it is cool, because I think it's really easy to be reactive in our scheduling, where it's like I'm just reacting to all the demands of my life, but someone being proactive enough to say, hey, like I want to be with you, it's huge. It's rare. Cool. Any other thoughts, questions, violent objections?
So, like, I have a violent objection.
Yeah, I did.
So obviously this is like a discipline thing.
Yeah, totally.
Our lives are centered around discipline, especially like spiritually.
Yeah.
But also like I'm a big believer in the fact that like if there's not an aspect of my life that like I would say, no, I don't need more discipline in this.
Yeah.
Because it kind of carries over.
Yeah.
So what's like the biggest thing for you, like you having discipline here has affected like, so I've had discipline in this and now I can manage my time better.
Ooh. Like a discipline that's not related to time that affects my time?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So, I don't know if this is what you're asking specifically, so tell me if this is off. But, so obviously this pandemic thing happened in 2020 called COVID. I'm sure you guys heard about that on the news. No, when that happened, mental health was something that I really wanted to invest in because, a lot of isolation, a lot of just, God, what's happening. And I found that the first few months of COVID, I made a conscious decision to say, I'm going to invest in my mental and physical health. I'm going to use this as a time to read, to study, to just be as healthy as I can possibly be. And what I found is that being disciplined in my mental health really changed what my time looked like from the standpoint of I was able to be a lot more present. Or I went through a season where I just took a lot of things personally. And so like if I failed at something, I wore that for like a day. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I did that. Like I'm such, blah, blah. But like having the ability to focus on my mental health and be able to separate, hey, like I made a mistake, but I'm not a mistake, and that difference, like the amount of time that I wasted by just feeling down about some minor thing that I did and like wearing that in ways that I shouldn't have. I found that even just taking care of my mental health affected the way that I could spend the rest of my time, because I'm not wasting 4 hours of my day feeling bad about the mistake I made. It's like, great, I made a mistake. Now I know next time I'll do it differently. Let's not let that affect the rest of my day. And so even stuff like that, or when I got married 3 years ago, my wife loves sleep. I've never been the guy that's like, go to bed early. I was a college pastor, so, we're up till 2 a.m. doing stupid stuff. And so when we got married, and she was like, all right, it's 9 o'clock. I'm like, great, so we're going out? Like, what we're doing? She's like, no, like, it's like time to go to bed. I'm like, 9 o'clock? Really? You go to bed at 9 o'clock? She was like, yeah. I was like, all right, guess I'll give it a shot. Like, I don't want to just like stay up by myself all night. And so I started trying this thing called sleep. And I would like wake up in the morning and I'd be so refreshed. And I was like, oh, once I got like disciplined about going to bed at like a decent hour and getting like a decent amount of sleep, like that affected my whole day, where I was like I wasn't as sluggish. I was a lot more present. I was a lot more active. Like I could get more stuff done in my time, because like if I had an hour, that hour was significantly more productive, because there wasn't some kind of like hazy fog of like, I'm tired. You know what I mean? So I feel like just like little stuff like that I've tried to be more disciplined in has just affected the time that I do have, because it makes me more alert. It makes me more, I don't know. It just allows me to take advantage of that time, I think, a little bit better.
The sleep thing, I understand it's not, but it feels counterproductive.
Dude, totally.
Because like I could go to bed at midnight.
Right.
That's 3 more hours I've got.
Exactly.
But I also have to write this paper.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Right. The other, 16 hours of my day suddenly are horrible.
Right,
Like,
totally. Yeah,
It feels counterproductive, but
dude, I couldn't agree more, man. Like, it honestly took getting married for me to learn how important sleep was. Because, and honestly, if it wasn't for that, I'd probably still be staying up until midnight, waking up at 6 or 7 and feeling like, why am I so tired all the time? Yeah, it's wild.
So do you wake up early now, or do you wake up?
Yeah, I try to wake up at 6-ish.
Are you pretty consistent with going to sleep on time?
Pretty consistent, yeah. Only because my wife is yeah, that's her thing. She's super disciplined in it. And so I just learned to be like, okay. We also just got a puppy, and that's affected the sleep a little bit, because that puppy's up at 5:30 every day. And so I'm slowly waking up earlier and earlier, but it happens.
I honestly think in college, I really don't see how people go to sleep. Honestly, I mean, so there's Netflix and stuff, and that you can obviously just stop doing. Just go to sleep. Don't watch the show, go to sleep.
Yeah.
But there's other things papers. Or
totally.
Whatever, that, especially because I'm a communications major.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
other people who are engineering.
Right. Yeah.
And really biology and all that stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
They can't. They really got to get stuff done, and they have
Totally.
labs and all that stuff. So I honestly think it's really almost impossible.
Yeah.
If you are able to do that, I have a lot of respect. But if you're
Yeah.
not, so that's why I feel like in college when people wake up and they're at their 2 p.m. class and they're just sitting there I feel like it's almost impossible to not get that unless you take 2 5-hour interviews or
right.
do something about it that's not natural for you.
Yeah.
To get woken up.
Yeah, totally.
That's with my Bible studies, I wanted to do that. And every time I do get in the Word, I feel better. The whole entire day. Every time I do, I feel better. But there's 2 p.m. and I'm done with class.
Yeah.
And I'm all right, Bible time.
Yeah.
And I get in, and I'm just and I'm I know this is good.
Yeah.
But I'm tired, so I'm you know what? I'm gonna do this later. And so I take a nap.
Yeah.
Then I don't do it, and then it sucks.
Yeah.
And I feel crappy. So I don't know. It's a bunch of I'm really not that big of an overthinker.
Yeah.
Usually when I talk about stuff like this, during the time it's kind of
Yeah.
I don't know, and then I get it done another time.
You totally.
But what I do want to start doing is being more intentional with that, and being okay. What is something that's super important that I know, no matter what,
Yeah.
it's going to help me.
Yeah.
In my Bible, it's going to help me.
Yeah.
Spiritually, mentally, everything. It helps throughout your entire life. So it sucks whenever, because of something else that I don't really care about, like ruins that for me. Like something that like schoolwork that I really like, I do it because I have to.
Yeah.
But I don't care about it, and that like gets in the way of like something that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Because because my teacher doesn't care if I read the Bible.
Right.
And like my teacher determines if I pass the class or not.
Right.
So it sucks. But like if I talk to like you about it, you'd be like, oh yeah, like, get that done. Like,
Yeah.
Thank you. Like, you know? So like it's me having to rely on the Lord, and that's really the answer. It's like a really like simple answer.
Yeah, totally.
But like it's just one that, you know, God knows what you're trying to do. He knows it. You're tired, and like you can't be too hard on yourself if like you want to take a nap. Like,
Yeah.
you're human. You need sleep. If you
Totally.
if you got 4 hours, like of course you're gonna want to take a 3-hour nap.
Yeah.
You have to equal it out. You know.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just sleep is like.
It's
People
great.
say it's great, but they're not going. It's also for the weak or sleep being alive.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and like college is hard because like college doesn't have a culture where like you're cool for going to bed at like a decent hour. You know, it's like.
But everybody wants it though. Like you're not cool. If
Totally.
You do it. But if you do it, everyone's like, oh, I wish I could do that.
Right,
Like,
totally.
It's like, but you don't. What? Like.
Well, and then you hear stories the next day. It's like, wait, everyone did this at 11. It's like, oh,
bro.
like the one night I went to bed on time. Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's a hard life, man. Yeah.
I feel what you said though about being a comedy, you know, what you used to do.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like, people are like,
Same.
I got all this. I'm like sitting there like,
That's about it.
Yeah. No.
Especially on the other side of that, in architecture, my life is consumed with just math, physics, and just studio, and it's a lot.
Yeah, I'm a
And like I could be
student
sitting
here.
up so late just working on my project, just like on my computer, because a lot of it's like online like design stuff. So I'm like on Photoshop, like 3 a.m. in the morning. I can't go to sleep because I have to get this lighting right, because I know my professor's gonna take 15 points off if it's not perfect. And it's a lot, and it's crazy. But I'm just like, you know, I just gotta get it done. And then I wake up, and then I find out all my friends didn't go to sleep either. And they were just all tired, and I have to go get a presentation or something the next day. And it's like, it's crazy. It actually happened to me. I served like the whole entire night getting my presentation ready because I had no time. And then I woke up and I just did my presentation and I went to sleep. But it was a good presentation.
There you go. There you go.
I do have to say, I've definitely had like, I'm a STEM major and I have to set myself like midnight I need to get done unless I have something to do the next day that I've like seriously put off. I set midnight as like I'm going to bed. And as I have to finish it, I'll finish it on Saturday. Or like I have to set like midnight as like the stop time. Or I will work until like 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been tests before where it's like I don't have any other time to study except for tonight. So I stayed up all night studying, didn't sleep, and then took that test at 9 a.m. and then
went to bed?
no, I didn't have time for that.
Oh, nice.
I had class.
Oh, bummer.
So I went to worship that night, and then after worship, I
just crashed.
I feel like it usually works out though. Like I know that I do my part, even though I don't have a lot of time to do it, like with like math or something. And I know even like on my final exam, like every test, I thought I was gonna fail at. Guess of every question, but somehow I got a 70 something. And I ended up being in class, and I was like, I have no clue how that happened, but it was crazy. And it's like I feel like God really did come through for me. I did my best, and I know that's all I could have done. And I was like, I knew it was not enough, but somehow it happened.
That's awesome.
I'm happy about that.
Love it.
I know, I thought I would retake it. I was like, I'm on retake straight.
Oh, yeah, that'd be brutal. Well, y'all, that's our time. Thanks for hanging out.